Welcome back to all my dear friends and participants for this course. A very good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you. And this course is titled Multi-Criteria Decision Making, which is under the NPTEL MOOC series. And as you know, it is a course which is for 12 weeks with 60 lectures, and each week you have 5 lectures with half an hour each for each lecture, and after each 1 week classes you have 1 assignments. And as you know that we are in the 10th week for this lecture series, and my good name is Raghunandan Sengupta from the IME department at IIT Kanpur. So, we were discussing about ELECTRE process, and I did discuss about the concordance discordance set and these concepts of so called non-parametric methods of multi-criteria decision making, which is a part and parcel of MCDM we are discussing after we have covered few simple topics about multi-objective decision making. And we did discuss about utility theory, multi-attribute utility theory and all these things. This is the 48th lecture under the 60 lecture series course. For today, we will be discussing the same method of ELECTRE method, but it is known as the Epsilon ELECTRE. Why Epsilon? I will discuss that, and then we will go through the steps. Now, before I start the class, I should remind you, overall the idea of calculation of the concordance index, concordance set, discordant index, discordance set, then trying to find out the condenses dominant matrix, discordant dominant matrix, then combining the concordance discordance matrix and finding out the final ways of analyzing which alternative should precede the other in the ranking system. Everything is same. There is only one subtle difference in the initial part, where I will lay stress. So, the later part there would be lot of slides which will be repetition. So, I would only highlight it. So, this set of lectures which you will have for the 48th one would be more in number, because I have gone through the concept of the ELECTRE method in general details. So, I would not be repeating all the same thing, but where it is important I will definitely highlight. Now, why we mentioned is Epsilon ELECTRE, I will discuss as we consider. So, here the first portion will be going slowly to analyze the main subtle difference between ELECTRE and Epsilon ELECTRE. In Epsilon ELECTRE method, we consider yes concordance set, we consider positive one, on discordance set, yes we consider the discordance set. But very interestingly, the concordance set and the discordance sets are not mutually exhaustive, because in concordance discordant concept in the actual method of Epsilon, it was very stark, go no go, black white, you like it, do not like it. It is there in the concordance set or it is there in discordance set. But in this Epsilon ELECTRE, we are also will consider the concept of indifference set. That means, where it is difficult to analyze whether the liking and the disliking can definitely be put into the concordance set indices or the discordance set indices. There would be some gray area, there is no stark black and white, there would be black, white and a gray. In the gray area, it is your people are indifferent. Now, this concept of liking, disliking, indifference we have already analyzed in the concept of utility sense. So, in the utility concept or the risk concept, we consider a decision maker can take a decision where he likes to take the risk, he does not want to take the risk, and in another case he or she would be indifferent to taking the risk. That means, whether alternative 1 is chosen with respect to 2 or 2 is just chosen with respect to 1, there is some reason or some region, not reason, region based on the positive and a negative impact of the concordance and discordance, no such differentiation can be made. Like, to give an example, that some person wants to choose a location of one apartment. So, I always go to the apartment example, buying a car and choosing the right college. So, you want to buy an apartment, consider in the city of Bhopal, consider, and there are two locations. One location is in the area which you really like, but the cost is high, and another one is in location 2 which you would not put in the same ranking as location 1, but the cost is low. So, if I am trying to compare the cost with the location place, obviously cost versus location, you are indifferent, that means you are trying to compromise. Or say for example, consider another thing, person 1 job, say for example, you are staying in your home city, consider it is Madurai, and consider you have got a job in Bangalore. So, consider somebody wants to move from Madurai to Bangalore, the cost implication would be huge. There would be huge increase in transportation cost, huge increase in the daily expenses, huge increase in the apartment you are trying to basically buy as give a rent for, or if some married person is going, there would be cost of schooling for the kids and so on and so forth. So, the cost implication on the cost front is quite high. So, if it is not compensated with a huge amount of increase in the salary, it would not make any sense, even if the job is very good. So, obviously, a compromise has to be made. So, you are indifferent whether go to for Bangalore city for a job and get a good salary, but the cost implication is high, and in the other sense stay in your hometown Madurai, which I gave an example, where the cost implication is low and the income is low, but you can balance it. But obviously, a person can immediately ask, one of you who is watching this set of videos can ask, what if the job opportunities, the overall change in the profile of the job, are not we going to take that? Yes, we should take that into consideration, but for the time being I am only considering the cost implication. Maybe on the job opportunity sense, in Madurai, the number of promotions which you can get staying in the same company would be less, but the overall competition considering the number of people who are working there is much lower, while in Bangalore the number of such openings in the same company is higher, but there is stiff competition also. So, you have to again analyze whether it is right or wrong to make the decision. So, these type of examples which I am giving may make sense when you are trying to basically analyzing this problem from of the concept of epsilon electra. So, having said that, let me continue. So, that if you remember, I said I will give you the introduction and the later part of the calculation moves exactly as the ELECTRE method. In epsilon ELECTRE method, we consider the concordance and discordance sets are not mutually exhaustive. The C and D which we consider, that means C being the concordance concept, the C and D is not equal to the overall set, where CKL is the set of those criteria for which AK is favored with respect to AL, while DKL is the set of criteria for which AKL is not favored with respect to L. So, they do not make up all the sets of criteria. Some of the criteria are such that you may be indifferent between alternative 1 and alternative 2, which here in this case I am marking as AK and AL. To account for this discrepancy, one need to consider those set of criteria which we put in the set of IKL, which will denote as the indifference set of criteria between AK and AL, such that when I consider the concordance liking, discordance disliking and indifference 1 would make up the whole set of criteria we are trying to analyze. There it was CD, here it is CDI. C means concordance, D means discordance and I means indifferent. So, now the process moves exactly the same. You have the set A is basically the cells or the values based on the overall value which you are trying to analyze between the alternatives based on the criteria. So, given that the set A is given and it is 3 by 3. Here as usual m is the number of alternatives, n is the number of criteria. You normalize them. I am using the log normalization scale here. So, when I find out the log, based on that we have the log values and find out the values and then normalize them. So, normalization I am doing is basically based on the fact that I add up the log values and put it in the denominator and then use that as a normalization case. So, you have seen that normalization being one case being x I j divided by summation of x I j. Another is log of x I j divided by sum of ln of x I j. So, here using that the normalized matrix X comes out to be this. Then we have the weights. We know the weights are with respect to the criterias and such that the sum of the weights should be 1, which we already know. So, based on that we have the weights, and here we consider the weights as 1/3 for all these 3. So, equal weightages. So, multiplying the normalized X matrix with the weights gives me the Y values, Y matrix. So, again remember the compatibility of the matrices should be such that you are able to get the multiplication of normalized X into weights would give you the Y matrix. Now comes the subtle difference which you have considered, the indifference one, that will be coming to the steps. Here you formulate the concordance index, which is how AK outranks AL and you put them in concordance. Discordance means, index means where AK never outranks or dominates AL and you put them in the discordance set. And indifference means where AK and AL cannot be differentiated, there you put in the indifference set. In the normal ELECTRE process, that I or indifference set or indices were not there, they were stark black and white in the C set and the D set. Here there is C, D and I. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you have, and again this same line which I am drawing, if you remember in that case we have drawn the line as blue and red. Blue means yes, concordance, red means no, discordance. Here I am trying to analyze the concordance and discordance along with the indifference. If you see the graph, and obviously the slides will be shared with you, see the graph, any portion onto the right along the real line is definitely in the C set. So, C I will basically mark with green in order to highlight the fact that concordance and discordance have the meaning. So, this would be the C set. Any set which is onto the left not liked, which does not outrank, does not dominate, would be given in the D set, and the indifference part where you cannot say whether it dominates, you cannot say whether it outranks, you cannot say it is negative, it is basically the I set. So, it is yellow, even though yellow is not visible, but in the line scale you can find out C on those set on the right, D, and that means if I am looking, and D set on the left and I is one portion in between. Now, the question is the epsilon or the difference. Now, if you remember in the concordance discordance set of the epsilon method, I consider the difference. Now, the difference, this epsilon which we can consider, can be made more or less depending on whether you are trying to consider asymmetricity also. Now, asymmetricity would arise from the fact that if you remember, I did mention one very simple example, even though it would not be an exact one, that will come under the concept of preference theory and all these things. Very simple idea that if I lose 10 rupees and gain 10 rupees, my level of satisfaction and dissatisfaction may be same, may be different. On the other hand, to extend that, consider I win 20, lose 20. So, I have lost 20 or I have gained 20, does not matter, so consider it does not matter to person 1. But for person 2, winning or gaining 20 rupees, losing 20 rupees obviously has an effect, positive and negative, but the level of satisfaction and dissatisfaction are of different quantum. In order to bring that quantum of level of dissatisfaction into the picture, I would basically consider the epsilon can be tweaked in order to consider that if indifference region to be more onto the right or to the left. More onto the right means more towards the green side or more towards the red side, depending on what is the amount of indifference concept the decision maker wants to bring into the discussion. So, concordance would be given by the fact that for YKL, if it for we will consider that for all j's we will basically combine that if L is better than J, we will basically put them in the concordance set or else we will put them in discordance set. Now, how far it is more the difference is, that will be given by the epsilon j. So, it would basically be dependent on case by case basis, decision maker basis, as well as based on trying to compare the alternatives based on different criteria. Now, the question is that why did I mention the word criteria? Like example, I would consider for my case, let me give an example, that if I am choosing the college. So, choosing the quality of the faculty members, quality of the education would be higher priority list than the cost. So, criteria of the quality of education and cost are criteria when choosing the college. So, if I am choosing a college 1 with respect to 2, then the quality, a small delta amount change in the quality would be a great positive point for me. When I consider the cost factor, in trying to compensate or trying to basically win over that quality, I am willing to basically incur a higher cost. So, the cost factor I am not that fussy, I am indifferent for a high level of cost, but for the quality of education I am fussy, that means my level of liking disliking is totally different. Consider the example of buying a car. For me, safety matter is more important than the cost. See, the car's engine is very good, is a very sturdy car, its safety features are very high, then trying to basically expend some extra amount of money does not matter to me. This is my viewpoint. Another decision maker can have a different viewpoints. So, considering the criteria based for any all the alternatives for the example which I gave, for someone, say for example, rather than quality of education, for him or her, the job opportunities are more important. Costs of studying is not that important, job opportunities. So, obviously, he or she will try to analyze the alternatives which are the college based on the job concept and put a higher level of liking disliking, or the indifference region would be much smaller. So, these type of problems can be analyzed, and this value of epsilon will depend on type of problems which you are trying to put into the picture. So, concordance would basically have all this where the outranks or dominates values are there. The green line would depict the region where it is more. So, you put on the positive side. The red and the yellow line would denote the discordance on the different region. Discordance means I definitely do not like, and in the between region yellow one would be where I am indifferent. So, any positive or negative in that band region does not matter to me, and the examples which I give. So, when I told about the color difference is exactly similar to the blue and red concept which I consider in the discordance and concordance concept. So, the indifference one, as I said, it can be symmetric, can be asymmetric. Symmetric one example, gaining 20 rupees, losing 20 rupees. They would be of different concept if somebody is trying to analyze the problem from the point of view of the idea that what is the different set or an indifferent set based on which the decision maker is going to take the decision. So, here the indifferent set, I am not going to the formulas, they would be shared with you. So, you can go through, but I am talking about the indifferent set would be, depending on the epsilon, would be that indifferent region between which I would definitely put both the alternatives in the same group. So, that would be analyzed by the yellow line, and here it is. If you see this yellow line, it is of unequal length of epsilon j1 and epsilon j2. So, j1, j being changing, obviously the lengths would change. That means, in the positive direction I am more indifferent here on the region here, and in the negative direction the length is smaller, and it can be reversed also based on that, which means a small amount of dissatisfaction I am definitely not going to, what should I say, I am not going to tolerate, but a large amount of dissatisfaction I am still happy. So, that means, if I lose 10 rupees, that can be compared, and given a hypothetical example, my level of unhappiness of losing 10 rupees can only be compensated when if I win 200 rupees. So, the happiness concept which I will get in trying to win or get 200 rupees can be compensated when I lose 10 rupees. So, in this way I am trying to analyze. It can be the other way around also, level of dissatisfaction and satisfaction can be reversed. More level of dissatisfaction I am willing to withstand than the level of satisfaction. So, the yellow line will depict the region where it will hold true that dissatisfaction indifference region is given, and the red one would be as usual be the part for the discordance. So, in this way we need to basically give an epsilon on the positive sense and the negative sense may not be of the same length. Based on that I try to analyze. Step 3, you will basically find out the discordance set. As you have found out the concordance, you will find out the discordance set, which is the red line, and the yellow line would be the indifference ones. Once we have that, based on y I am trying to analyze. Y means basically the normalized x multiplied the weights. Weights were, if you remember, were all 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So, when I am trying to compare C between the alternatives, I would now have C, D and I. I was not there in the initial case. When I compare along the rows of the columns, I would basically have where j is equal to 1, I have in the indifference region. Obviously, comparing with itself with all the criteria would give me the indifference region. So, I would have C concordance with null set, discordance with null set, and indifference would be set 1, 2, 3, which is there is no difference between them. When I compare C12, D12, I12, based on the fact that I compare 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 1 to 3 based on the next level of criteria. The sets are, again please go through the slides to clear. So, I will have concordance 2, indifference 3 and discordance 1. Here indifference is coming into the picture. Similarly, when I do C13, D13, I13, I have C13 null, D13 null and I13 as 1, 2, 3. By the way, the epsilons can be tweaked in order to basically get different sets of values. So, if I continue, I am only marking them C21, I21, D21, then C22, I22, D22 and D13, this is D22, sorry. Then I have C23, I23, D23, C31, I31, D31, then C32, I32, D32, C33, I33, D33. One important thing, when I am comparing C11, D11, I11, C22, D22, I22, C33, D33, I33. In all the cases, the concordance and the discordance set will always be null. Indifference concept would basically have all the elements in the I set. So, once I have that, I basically have an asymmetric set, and here is the asymmetric set. If I compare here the first cell, which is 1 1, then second one principal diagonal 2 2, third is 3 3, just make a note. Here it is I 1 1 all the elements, here I 2 2 all the elements, here I 3 3 all the elements, and based on that I have this concordance discordance matrices, and it should be concordance discordance indifference matrix. Important thing here, when I compare this, when I compare this and when I compare this, here the idea comes out to be very stark. Few important difference, I will mark them in red. C21 and C12, when I compare, it is 1 and 2 elements which are different, obviously they is asymmetric. When I consider D21 and D12, it is 2 1, 2 1 means element being 2 1. Similarly, if I use this set C23, C23 is 2 and null, D32, D23 it is null and 2. That means, trying to compare them based on the ideas of concordance, discordance and difference, indifference one would give you different results. Considering the concordance, discordance, we have the relative weights for the concordance concept. I add up the weights. So, WC weights are given, which I have the construct the concordance discordance matrix, indifference and in discordance. What I do is basically I add up the weights for which is positive or negative depending on concordance, discordance and the indifferent concepts. Now, again important thing here, very interesting is two things. If you remember, for the concordance set, the weights were all adding up one for the mirror image of the elements according to the principal diagram. Here it is not, because we have divided into 3 sets C, D, I. So, they do not add up to 1, this do not add up, does not add up to 1, and this also does not add up to 1. What you need to remember is similarly for the indifference one, they also would not add up to 1. For the 3 weight matrix, these 3 weights, the weights correspondingly for each element wise, they should add up to 1. Here it is what I want to highlight. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 add up to 1. That means, I am taking the element of 1, 1 comma 2, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 add up to 1. If I take the element of 3 2, 3 2, 3 2, it adds up to 1/3 plus 2 is 1. If I take the element of 2 1, 2 1, 2 1, it is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is 1. If I take the element of 2 3, 1/3 dash means does not have any point and 2/3 is 1. So, in this way you can verify the addition of the weights corresponding to indifference C, D and I would add up to 1. So, the epsilon steps ELECTRE would continue in this discussion, and we will basically try to wrap up the problem accordingly in the next class. Have a nice day and thank you very much.